Thank you so much, Gauri, for being here today. I am so excited for our conversation. We're going to launch straight in and get to the
Of
fun part
course.
of it. But before I start that, I want to ask you something because I think some of our questions will pop up later related to this topic. Have you ever sat and looked at yourself in the camera for 5 minutes?
Absolutely not.
It's
Yeah,
terrifying, isn't it? Right?
it is. It's terrifying. I actually always turn off self view on Zoom as well, so I don't even have that. Yeah.
I've been sitting here for the last 5 minutes because I finished setup early, and I was
Oh
like,
no.
ah, looking at you, that guy, Andrew. Are you happy with yourself?
Did existential things come up? Was it a
Seriously,
moment?
like just being on a little camera, right, really puts you in that loop of like, who is that person? Is that
Mm,
person any good?
very deep.
Yeah, I get. I mean, I didn't intend for it to. I was just sitting there doing this, and then I looked over and I saw myself in the camera. I was like, oh. But I do not get that feeling when you are here. So thank you so much for being a guest
Of
on the
course.
show.
Such a
I'm very
pleasure.
excited to talk about your experience with you today. Um, for our listeners and watchers, Gary is the founder of many things actually, but she started a career in human rights,
Mhm.
has built an organization known as the Better Politics Fund slash Foundation. Is that correct?
The
Uh,
fund, exactly.
Fund, great,
Yeah.
brilliant, and is still the chair of that, and is embarking on upon a new adventure with an organization called Dear Money that she is building from the ground up that we'll have a chance to talk about. But Gary, it's not useful for me to talk about you. Would love to learn more about you from your perspective. Like, tell us a little bit about you. Outside of your career, like, who are you?
Oh, big question. It's so lovely to be here, first of all. Thanks for doing this. You're
Of
asking
course.
such interesting questions, and I think we're all, I think, grappling with what this is. What is work? How do we deal with work at this time? And,
Yeah,
what is useful work, impact, all of that good stuff. So it's lovely to be here.
I'm delighted to have you.
Well, I mean, I don't, who I am outside work is actually these days very similar to who I am in work, which is part of the answer to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm Dutch originally. I come from Holland, but I'm really, really classic European. I left Holland very young. I studied European law and then I studied human rights. And since then I've lived in many countries in Europe. And my husband now, but partner of many years, is
Yay.
Irish. So we are, that classic sort of very European couple living in
Amazing.
Berlin.
Yeah. So cool. I think that's part of I think like those little bits of being classically European, right? In the sense of like traveling and living in different places is quite an amazing experience in the construct that you always, I guess, at least in American TV, right? You get this perception that you're going to do this thing and you're going to go on this course and you're
Yeah.
going to be there forever, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of where it is. And most people don't leave their homes, which is completely great. Um, but I guess in the European context, there's a lot of people who do get to live across these different places. Have you found that to be like particularly like meaningful, or is that do you feel detached from things? Do you feel like I'm floating through these different places and I don't have that sense of
Mm.
being locked in?
It's a really good question, actually. I mean, I think there's a certain amount of privilege around it, of course. Not everyone gets to do that. I'm very
Sure.
lucky that basically I got a loan to be able to do this master's program somewhere. But there's also programs it's a little old school, but thank you, EU. The
Mm,
Erasmus program, allowing students to exchange countries, like these are
mm,
really valuable experiences for people. I really love
mm,
it, actually. And I think the main thing for us is that we really took a decision quite a while ago to
mm,
really choose home instead of
mm,
just going for the default. And
mm.
Berlin really is that home for us. So I think it's more about kind of recognizing that place can be very important for your well-being, for how you feel, for how you are in the world. And for us, yeah, that happened to be outside both of our home countries.
Yeah, I love that statement you made about choosing, right? Because I think the creation of home is
Yeah.
about intent, right? It's about the meaning and how you make it a special place for you, right? Because otherwise, you can be in any place and it's not home, right? That's why consultants are flying everywhere, and then they're like, "I feel detached." Well, you're like, "Well,
Yeah.
yeah."
Yeah. And for some people, where they're born and grew up and their family doesn't feel like home, right?
Mm,
So
yeah,
even, I mean, just having that ability I've always seen it as a huge positive part of my life, being able to sort of live somewhere that I really choose and love.
yeah, it is a
Yeah.
blessing. No, it's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit how you got started in the human rights space, right? Because most people, when they think human rights, they think, "Whoa, that's actually quite intense," right? Like, if you're thinking about your day-to-day life, and someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a human rights lawyer," like, "Whoa, it's kind of meaty, it's kind of heavy." How did you think about getting into that space, and what perceptions did you have about human
Mm.
rights and advocacy and like those kind of organizations that you would typically be working in?
Yeah.
And then I'll ask the question after, which is, how do you feel about it now?
Well, the truth is, I knew very, very young, very early, that I wanted to do something with. I think the way I would describe it back then is sort of helping people figure out the system we're in, and sort of working with people who fall through the cracks. I mean, I'm myself not from a rich background, so I come from a, sort of lower class family. Lower class sounds wrong, but working class
I get
family,
what you mean.
and
Yeah.
who also worked their way up eventually, amazingly, very proud of them. But it wasn't a super easy space. It was a bit of a rough upbringing, and a wonderful element of that actually was that I spent a lot of my time in the library,
Mm.
just to have a calm space to do homework. And
Yeah.
I just like being there. And actually, the reason I mention it is because the first time that I realized, ooh, I could really help actually, is when I was working there, I was just doing my homework. And I was meeting quite a few homeless people because,
Mm.
the library is a great place. It's warm, there's tea, it's a lovely spot.
Yeah.
And I ended up actually helping out a couple of them quite regularly and I was very young. I think I was something like 11. It was really, really,
Yeah,
really, really,
that's
really
pretty
young.
young.
And I remember being a very sassy 11-year-old, basically calling up services and saying and pretending to be like a grown up and a lawyer and saying things like, my client would like to ask for this and this benefit, or there seems to have been a mistake with the debt agency. And so I was I was this child kind of feeling that, ooh, there is something I can actually do here if I learn how the system works, and if I
Mm.
really learn the language of power, of those who are in charge of the system, however you want to call it,
Yeah.
I can really make a change. Um,
There's a
so
TV
that
show there. There's definitely a TV show there.
this kind of child, it's so strange to think back on it because, of course, from your own perspective, it's
Mm.
completely normal. But yes, that's not normal. And the good
What
thing
is
also,
normal?
but it was not the reason I mention it is because I had this really, really, really early ingrained sense of justice, of wanting to be of service, also because, frankly, sometimes I've needed help. So understanding that no matter where you're raised or born, it doesn't mean that you're fine. It really depends on who you ask whether, for example, it's good to live in, let's say, the Netherlands, amazing
Yeah.
country, super rich, but there's still people who fall through the cracks, right?
Yeah.
And so I've had that underdog defense, kind of drive. That's really been
Yeah.
my motivator always. And so you asked about how you get started in human rights. So I knew quite
Mm.
early. I thought, okay, I guess law is the way. This
The
felt
language
right.
of power, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it felt very straightforwardly the case that if you learn law, you can actually fight for things. So I went into that. Now, one thing to say about the human rights world, and actually this goes for a lot of nonprofit, like sort of social change world, it's actually really hard to get started. So
Tell me
there's,
about it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a very elitist world, actually. I mean, so if you don't have wealth, right? We'll touch on this later. It's one of the reasons that I sort of went more into that.
Yeah.
If you don't have wealth, how are you going to do an unpaid internship? Like all the UN internships, for example, are unpaid. I think there's change now, but it's unbelievably slow. I mean, that was really difficult. So I was very lucky. I worked very hard at my second master's program. This was in Venice, which is amazing. That's also where I met my husband.
Oh,
So
that's amazing. Yeah,
good,
what a
good
beautiful city for
year all
that.
in. And it was through basically reaching this. You had this. It's not a competition, but basically a rule that if you were in the top 10 or the top 10 students, you would get a paid internship. And
Nice.
so
Yeah.
that's how I got a paid internship. So I had my first experience. This was an NGO working with torture survivors in Brussels, so a lobby
Yeah,
organization.
light.
But it was just a start, right? And
Yeah.
that was incredibly powerful. And then I started to just work really, 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 really hard. And ultimately, I ended up working for a women's rights group. And I started working in the European Parliament. And then I finally really reached what for all of us was like the pinnacle of human rights work, which was I started work at Human Rights Watch, which really feels like, the dream when you're getting started. I was young starting there. I started working on issues that are very, very tough. I specialize in women's rights, but I would say especially on issues that touch multiple traumas, so sexual violence, domestic violence, and that was really the big kickoff point for my human rights career. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it's such an incredible thing because I really appreciate the first part about what you said about, the access to participate in something like this, right? Is to say, oh, I want to go out and make a difference and participate in something that is so essential to how we think about, equality and equity. But in order to achieve it, there's these crazy barriers that put in place
Huge.
for you, who you get it, how you can get in. And right, I didn't even join, such a prestigious organization as that. In that, when I joined the third sector, right, I started off just joining, a local group, and I had so much pushback on you don't have any charity or third sector experience
Oh yeah.
that I was just like, guys, I mean, I'm not saying I know your problems, but I'm not an idiot either, right? Like, I think I can get in there and do my best, right, and learn.
Oh
But there's just
yeah.
such institutional barriers to stop you from saying, "Oh, you should be part of this," right? And
Yeah.
that's so confusing when I think ultimately it's about the dedication and the work and the thinking, the critical thinking to be part of this. So
Sure.
it's fascinating to see that this is something that is everywhere, unfortunately, when it
Yeah.
comes to like how that gets carried out.
Yeah, and also, I mean, one thing to mention there is, so it's not, of course, it's not always true. I mean, frankly, the fact that I got in is amazing. I'm super grateful for that. But there's also disconnect a little bit to how most of these organizations are funded. So there's also a lot of, you know, I'm a big donor. My child would like to work in this space. Can you please give them an internship? It's always the lower level jobs that those
Mm-hmm.
things are given to. And that's really
Oof.
common, which is a pet peeve of mine, honestly. I
the
try
the
to,
dark side of doing good, right there.
it's really, yeah, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, all these dynamics happen everywhere, right? There's plenty of nepotism in other places. But
Yeah.
it also happens in these NGOs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
frustrating. It's frustrating. Well, now that we're talking about slight dark sides, right? This is not an attempt, of course, to smash the sector, right? Because the sector is inherently human, right? We have our flaws. Things are going to be bad. Things are going to be good. We're going to make mistakes. But I think a lot of people have this perception that third sector and charity and NGOs are supposed to be flawless, right? And that's just
Yeah.
we're measuring that kind of impact on such ridiculously holy scale, right?
Yeah.
That it's kind of like, well, how's that practical? I mean, you know, how being in it and then looking at it now that you've stepped out of that particular role in human
Yeah.
rights, what things frustrate you about the sector and what things do you love about the sector? Because I think we shouldn't only talk about negatives.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, look, pretty much all my friends work in the human rights space. I feel very, very deeply about the truly beautiful work that I've seen, that I've been grateful to be part of. Really magical, actually, to see something change because of your work. And that's always a group effort. It always involves others, other groups. But the fact that that's something that you can professionally work on is an unbelievable honor, right? And so having experienced many failures, but also a couple of very concrete, very direct shifts in the world, just for
Yeah.
people, really tangible shifts for people
Mm,
that made their lives better because of the work that we did.
mm.
I mean, very little beats that, right?
No, I
So,
think you're right.
but I think that the honest question that we need to ask ourselves, and one that I've asked myself,
Mm,
is that purpose. So making the world better, whatever that means to you,
mm,
but essentially supporting others to be well in different ways is something you can achieve also outside these very rigid paths of
mm.
doing good as a profession, right?
Yes.
And so that, to answer your question, I think there's sometimes a sense in some of these, particularly the larger, because I moved from Human Rights Watch and then to Amnesty International, which is a
Mm.
massive human rights campaign
Small
organization.
organization.
Exactly, very big. Something that tends to happen, a couple of things actually. So one thing is that, of course, most of us, and that includes me, were promoted not because we were going to be good managers, but because we were good researchers or good advocates
Mm.
or good at the job we had,
Yeah.
right? So so I just happened to invest a lot in leadership and understanding how to be a good manager. That at least I try. I really made an effort. But you have a whole sector where essentially how to run an organization is not part of the skill set of,
Amen.
yeah, of those in
Whoa.
charge.
So real.
You know, and so that creates suffering. It creates suffering in the organization and also amongst those leaders, because it is also very difficult if you don't know how to do this, because no one's taught us. It's also very hard to do it. So there's one thing. The other thing that I would mention is that, of course, we're a field of often slightly broken people. And I count myself as one of them. I've had to do a lot of work after I had a massive burnout, and I I see with such love this field, and especially those kind of, again, in those larger groups. There's just no room really for processing of what you work on, what you've seen. I would hold stories and people, like hundreds of them, in my head, in my heart,
Mm.
and then put on top of that the first item, so the tricky leadership and the
Yeah.
management issues and the toxicity also in organizations and the pressure
Yeah.
from fundraising and all the other things.
Mm.
It's quite a toxic cocktail.
Mm-mm-mm.
It's very hard
That's
to
Yeah,
work
that's such a
through.
burden to carry because, and I think people don't appreciate, I mean, people appreciate that, oh, you can work with really intense issues, right? But I think most people forget that, like, in their day-to-day job, right, they already deal with, like, inefficient management and all these kind of things. Then add on, like, the really human layer, right? There's a
Yeah.
difference if you're selling cloud compute and then you're worried about people being, sexually assaulted in this community on a systemic level, and their stories and you feel that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And you're carrying that, just going to lunch today, and I'm gonna let
Yeah.
that stew in the back of my head. And that's
That's right. I think that's right. And also, I think what's kind of humanizing about everyone, at least the people that I've worked with, many of them, is that if I'm really honest in looking back at what caused me the most stress, it's probably not that. I think that
okay.
the most stress came actually from interorganizational,
Mm,
like sort of just your regular, you know,
just management issues.
management. Yeah. I mean, it's so
Oh
funny in a
God.
way. It is true that you're particularly sensitive, of course, and particularly highly strong when you're dealing with these issues. And I have to say, I mean, I was also, and many of my friends are dealing with really specifically horrific situations right now. Like one of my friends is the head of Middle Eastern in Amnesty International. I mean, whew, that's a tough
Yeah,
job.
that's a heavy burden.
But but yes, it's actually also just how the organizations work, how the culture is, management issues, entitlement, all sorts of very, very, very yeah, basic issues that are just not dealt with. And part of that issue isn't, again, this isn't to blame anyone in these organizations, but I think we're all doing our best. But there's something inherently tricky about when nonprofit organizations become quite large.
Yes.
What tends to happen, or at least quite often happens, is it becomes more about the upkeep of the castle, right? Sort of
Yes.
keeping things going and fundraising enough to keep all these people going and da, da, da.
Mm-hmm.
Then to really, really investigate, are we having impact? Is this working? Are we moving things? What do we need to change to make it happen? Testing, testing, testing. You just have less of that energy in these kind of groups.
Just, I did not expect to come to this point, but in the thinking, but it makes me think that ultimately, the type of innovation that like big corporations are forced to go through, we forget that impact organizations, right, who are trying to change the world for good, are
Yeah.
also in this requirement to kind of go through an innovation or a rethinking of
Yeah.
how they make a difference, right? Because otherwise we end up in a very stagnant organization that is just bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that thought kind of actually surprised me. I mean, like, I mean, and this is kind of weird because I've been working in the charity sector for a while, and I've been questioning, how do we balance these two priorities of impact and sustainability?
Yeah.
And it's quite refreshing to hear that there is this innovation cycle challenge issue at the top, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
most people just think, oh, they're just wasting all their money on admin. And you're like, well, yeah, and there's some of that.
Yeah. It feels so do you know that actually that point around admin just reminded me that, I mean, one of the reasons that I moved from those human rights nonprofit organizations into funding, into foundations, is because I realized, at the source here is actually an issue with funding,
Yes.
with how these organizations are fueled. And there's some pretty fundamental problems there
Talk
around,
about that. Like, what are you? I think this
yeah,
is a great line of interrogation, right? That any detective should be following the money. So,
yes, following money.
tell us,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, look, again, lots of positive, examples, and super happy to go into those. And I've tried to at least contribute a little bit to that sort of more positive side of funding. But look, from the very basics, right? If you're constantly fighting for funding because these funding cycles are like 1 year's project funding cycles, for
yeah,
example. So nonprofits cannot think big picture, long term, strategic. It has to be this project person, that project person,
yeah,
this and that. It's all very scattered,
very bucketed.
very buckety. Exactly. It's also things like the sort of let's say, I'm trying to think of how to say this well. I mean, essentially, there's winds that blow in philanthropy,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I get that.
right? So suddenly everyone follows each other into certain terminology, and then the whole sector starts to talk about that terminology, right? Things like suddenly everyone talks about systemic change. Great, love systemic change.
Hmm. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? What's not to like? But then it's just an example. There's many, many more. Or,
Hmm.
for example, suddenly everyone says we're leaving Europe and the US. That actually happened to me
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Illuminate. And then, of course, now they're back.
yeah.
But these kind of cycles, right? So what's problematic about that is that when you have that kind of inflexible short-term funding, NGOs are spending a lot more time than they should on figuring out
Hmm.
how to please donors, right? They're just
Hmm.
trying to figure out what language should I use to then get the money, and there's
Yeah.
very little money available for real innovation. It's overused innovation, but it's very rare that a funder, especially foundations, really want to fund something new.
Yeah, they're like, if we can be on the cutting edge, then this is a really great. We can lead the whole philanthropy sector as being the one who did this first.
Yeah. And that's actually, if that would actually happen, meaning they would often fund things that are new. But what very often happens, unfortunately, is they just sort of come together around certain groups, and then the cutting edge part is just like a sub project in that group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of risk aversion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about risk in the philanthropy sector, but quite often it's a way to hide unease with something that they're not familiar with. So, you know, it's a little bit of a tangent, but just really quickly, like this language around risk, right? So I've seen this happen a lot in foundations where someone will just say, okay, this is too risky, we can't do this. And when you really unpack it, it often involves a new leader or a leader who's from a different background who
Yeah.
basically isn't a white male, right?
All right.
Or
Okay.
frankly,
Scandalous. Yeah, I get it.
or it's a concept that's not quite proven. So again, actually cutting edge potentially, but it's also scary, right? Because we
Yeah.
don't know what's going to come from it. But it's interesting because then when you engage and actually look at what groups have imploded, or where have there been big scandals, or where have there been really big issues,
Yeah.
the white dudes do come out pretty pretty
Tricked
high.
you. It's actually the normal guys. Yeah.
Turns out
Oh God.
they're the dangerous ones, right? Okay, that's a little controversial, but you know what I
No,
mean.
I think that's
Yeah.
that's interesting though, right? Because ultimately there's a couple things that are at play here, right? Like you have people who are theoretically trying to give away their money, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the
Amazing.
structure. I'm giving away my money.
Yep.
And then on top of that fundamental premise, we put this idea that we have to do it really smart.
Yeah.
And we have to do it in this particular way. And that's what defines smart, right? Is that
Yeah.
it's this person who's come from Harvard, who has been an
Correct.
ex-investment banker, who is now leading the foundation. You're like, what? No offense. How's your experience around, the issues at its core,
Yeah.
experience for you in Manhattan?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Exactly. I've
is
had
that a
this quite
normal
often.
thing?
I mean, it happens all the time where I'm asked by, this is usually consultants who are brought in by foundations who then do scoping research, right? And so I'm asked quite often because we do a lot of work in Europe. So I have very deep, 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 deep connections and sort of experience here. And so I do these, and I actually stopped doing them because I find it tricky to just download this information to a bunch of, frankly, usually American consultants. God bless.
Hi guys.
Hi. But the reason I bring it up, it's not, again, it sounds a little too negative perhaps, but what's tricky about that is I've quite often seen really incorrect conclusions from that kind of scoping work, right? Like the other day I saw something that said, I mean, there's nothing happening in Europe when it comes to political funding. And I'm like,
And you're like,
tricky because
true.
kind of
I
what
do
we're doing.
that.
Kind of what we're doing.
I do that.
I do that, but fair. It's a small field. I get it. It's
Yeah.
hard to find. You have to search. It's hard to know. It's hard, like there's. I get it. It's not obvious, but it's a funny example. It's that thing.
Yeah.
It's that thing when women say, "Oh, my dream is that I'm mansplained by someone about my own work." You know what I mean?
And you're sitting there like,
Similar.
this is me.
But really going back to, it's a very simple point in a way. Like you can have incredible impact with NGOs, and you can have incredible impact with other types of organizations
Yeah.
and with other types of people. And we need to let go of that arrogance of, oh, it has to be the charity sector, that has the amazing influence in the world. It's just not necessarily true. It's a big part of it, but there's many other places where there's amazing energy, amazing leadership, incredible ideas being developed. I care about the impact. I don't care about the castle.
Mm. I love that because just the other day I heard the story of a person who rejects the title leader, but is in many ways a catalyst for supporting and enabling others, right?
Mm.
And this person is not necessarily focused on some massive social issue, right? They're simply trying to live their lives and help enable others just to be the fullest of themselves, right? And
Beautiful.
so yeah, and you're just like, this person is just is truly an everyday Joe when it comes down to it, right? They're not trying to lead some mega organization. And the amount of lives that that person has impacted,
I bet.
right, is so amazing. And so you just ask the question of like, why do we have this perception that it has to be this charity that I work for to make a difference, right? When you can work literally, I don't want to oversimplify, but like you could be at Papa John's
Mhm.
and whip up pizzas and affect a positive change because what we're all looking for is for people to build each other up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's nicely put. I really agree with that. In fact, I feel the more mature I get, let's put it that way, the more I learn. And this may not be true for everyone, but it definitely feels true for me. Is that I want to work both on the systemic, big
Mm.
picture shifts that we need to see in the world
Yeah.
and on individual shifts, right? So I also work with, individual with leaders. I do work with people who want to, get better with how they deal with their work. I
Mm.
help people design their sort of portfolio careers,
Yeah.
and I love that combination. And I used to mistakenly position one above the other.
Mm.
So, I would always just emphasize the first part until very recently, actually. So, I'm a founder. I work in politics. I do, human rights lawyer, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And all of that's true. And it is essential. And I will
Mm.
not let go of that. It is a very big part of my work, my days.
Mm.
And I continue to do that. And also, the other pieces that I was doing for years without really emphasizing it, this kind of
Mm.
just just the work of supporting a new leader of a small new organization that's trying to
Yeah.
do good in the world and helping her figure out how can you build a healthy team that feels good, how can you make sure you're not burnt
Yeah.
out, how can you actually lead with conviction, all of that. I mean, it changes how that person feels. It probably
Mm.
changes that whole organization. It probably changes the impact that they have.
I
So,
bet it changes you as well,
and
right?
exactly. And I love doing it because, of course, as I also qualified more for that work and kind of grew that practice, it's very satisfying once in a while to not have to wait 10 years for the impact and, in fact, just feel that just even one conversation can
Yeah.
have a really profound impact on a human being. So yeah, that combination is, I think, what matters. Like understanding that it is as important to work on inner work and strength and being grounded and
Yeah.
learning how to do that and how to be in this world of constant change.
Mm.
If we had more people like that leading organization or just working in these different spaces, coming up with ideas, getting creative, doing the work that we want to see in the world. How
Mm.
amazing. How
Yeah.
beautiful.
It would be so great.
Yeah.
I think we just genuinely forget the kind of help that we that maybe was more default when we lived in a little village, right? Where you say,
Yeah.
I'll just help out this person with this small thing,
Yeah.
right? Is no longer done when we're commuting on our 1 hours, going to the suburbs, coming back. You didn't help that person because you don't know that person. So why would you help that person? But the interaction to be able to engage with another person and to support them, even
Yeah.
just in a small thing,
Yeah.
it really ties us all together, right? And that's a weird construct in London, Berlin, where
Yeah.
people are like, whoa, you're my personal space.
Yeah. Exactly. Get away
Right?
from me.
Oh God.
Do you know what it
Oh,
also does is certainly for me, but I think for many of us, it helps us stay very grounded and very humble. As in,
mm.
we're all just little bumblebees, like bouncing off walls. I mean, really, I mean, we are just little animals. We
Yeah.
need love, we need connection, we need nature, we need
Mm.
nurture,
Yes.
we need confirmation. Sometimes all I do with I shouldn't say this because people expect more than that, but
They're
sometimes
like,
all I do,
you're just listening.
I'm just basically, I mean, not just listening, but just confirming, like, wow, that does sound hard.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry that you're dealing with that. Yeah.
People do not feel seen today
No.
at all, right? Even in the smallest ways. I mean, like, I had this really wild revelation. Um, and I did this little project where I set up a coffee cart near a train station, right?
Cool.
Yeah, eccentric, here we go. And so I set up a coffee
I
cart,
love it.
and in that process, I realized that people spend a solid 2, 3 hours of the day surrounded by people, never saying hello, never connecting with a single other person, right? To
Yeah.
be seen in that moment where you can actually listen to them is, even if it's
Hmm.
just, oh, would you like a tea? How are you? That's it,
Yeah.
right?
What a great idea. What a great
It
thing
was
that you
great. It
did.
was it was a wild experience. I loved it entirely.
Yeah. Beautiful.
We'll
I
try to do
also,
that again.
the other thing that I do is these quarterly group. Basically, every season I hold one group, and it's just something that I love doing. It's just 6 people, 6 leaders, and we just have 6 sessions together. And it's funny because people underestimate how much sort of structure it takes for
A
a
good
relaxed
conversation.
gathering, right?
Mm,
But it is unbelievable what happens. It's so, yeah, I feel it's such, again, I'm worried about sounding like such a cliche, but in such an extremely disconnected time, right? But also the sort of era where we just cannot focus on anything. And so just the
mm,
practice of taking 90 minutes in a group,
crazy.
I mean, and listening to each other
Yeah.
and connecting, and it's unbelievable. It really feels like a spa session. It's truly unbelievably transformative.
I love that. And I think if I were to make a leap, right? I think just hearing you describe that, it sounds a lot like what you're trying to do when you're thinking about the relationship with dear money, right? The
Yeah.
idea that you're rethinking how
Yeah.
we just engage with the topic. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, thanks so much for this subtle bridge. But it's very, yeah. So I started doing something that is such a jump from what I did before that it almost feels uncomfortable to talk about, but it is so personal and so beautiful that I'm excited to at least share it with you. It's something called Dear Money, Dear Money, or Dear Money Letters on
Yeah.
Substack. It's a very basic premise. The reason I developed this, actually together with a wonderful former colleague of mine, Sal Ahmed, the reason I looked at this and needed this is because basically I found myself in a foundation and I was looking around, and there was a big jump from Amnesty International to this foundation,
Mm.
and it was quite a moneyed scene. So do you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
extreme, but just I was just looking around. I remember saying to my partner at the time, everyone seems to have a good watch.
Yeah.
That feels, different from where I was before.
Hey.
And
You
the
guys
reason
kind of rich.
the reason I mentioned that in context of Dear Money is because essentially I was still completely panicking about money. I had such anxiety. I've had that my whole life. Like I said, I don't come from money. Tricky relationship. My parents had difficult relationship with money. There was all sorts of debt and issues. And I realized that I needed to learn everything there is about how can I feel better about money. And I also needed to do some deep work around how do I let go of these ideas around money? Like what is it that's making me feel disproportionately anxious? And so I dove in. I spent 2 years digging, 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 finding resources that are not of your kind of cut your lattes type, but
Yeah.
or here's Bitcoin, right?
Let me
But
teach you how to get
get
enough
rich
life savings.
fast.
Stop everything. Eat beans.
Eat beans, and then you invest that, and then you're going to be rich. So
Yeah.
that felt rare. It was hard to find actually what I was looking for. So I decided long story short, it's now a program. We developed it into essentially a 6-stage program that is done live online. Again, kind of going against the grain of turning it fully into some kind of self-guided program. It's really done live, and it's a group program, and the group part is very important. So it's actually
Nice.
a group of people coming together, going all the way from where does this come from? How did I grow up around money? Where do my
Okay.
fears come from? Where do my money beliefs come from? What was my first memory? That work. To then moving into dreaming what wealth actually looks like for you. Like what what would your imagined wealth be like, right? And I know it sounds small, but for so many people, again, especially people who don't come from wealth, never take the time to imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, the stories I get, it's just unbelievable. I mean, this isn't, oh, I want a
Mm.
car, right? It's things like,
Mm.
I want to take care of my family. I want
Yeah.
to have flexibility and freedom. I want to know, that I can turn down things if I don't love the
Yeah.
people. I want to support my community. I want to support refugees. I want to do, I
Mm.
mean, those are the things that come up.
That's
Okay,
so cool.
which
Yeah.
is amazing. And then, sorry, just to sort of
No,
show
no, keep
that
going.
this isn't just therapy, we then actually turn that into actual goals and figuring out
Yeah. Yeah.
how we share some of the best research out there around how to set yourself up in a way that is good. So we're going to basically get you from very anxious to at least calm and steady to then build onwards from there. So that's it. It's a program, it's a retreat, it's a workshop. We have different things.
That's
Dear money.
it. No,
That's
that's
it.
huge, right? That's so cool because for me, I'm like while you were describing the process, right? I went on a mini journey there about imagining what is my relationship with money,
Hmm.
what is my dream of like quote unquote wealth, right?
Yeah.
And it just got me thinking that there's just so much of my self worth
Yeah.
tied to these constructs of money, right? And I know you said it's not just a therapy session, but like in some ways that's almost what we need to rebuild
That's right.
our perception of how money should interact with us, right? Because for so many
Hmm.
people it's this awful stressful thing
That's
where
right.
you're like, I don't have enough of it, every day I got to work for it, right? And no one, I mean, that doesn't sound terribly healthy, just describing in those
Hmm.
words, right? So how does that pervade every aspect of my life
Yeah.
of what I try to do with money, how do I engage with it? And then you watch those Instagram videos where people literally like, this is the rich person mindset, right?
That's right. Get up at 5.
Yeah,
Do your yeah.
you
It's
think you're
not.
like,
So I got so caught up in this myself and felt so lost. And I just noticed two things. So one is, yes, we do really actually need that therapy to let go of some of these notions. But also, Dear Money is, of course, not really about money, right?
yeah,
It's about imagining a life for yourself and then getting it,
mm,
right? It's kind of
mm,
opening up the opportunity of what could be and then actually going for it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And in the least tacky way possible. So, in a sort of, we're not manifesting, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But we're actually imagining, we're
yeah, yeah.
dreaming, we're doing some dreaming, and then we're actually doing it. And
And laying
the
out the path to it, right?
laying out
Like
the
not,
path.
yeah, like a pragmatic
Yeah,
approach. So like this is the marrying of the hypothetical with
correct.
what we need to do today.
Do you know the thing
Mm.
that blows me away is that, so we do these surveys, of course, before and after, and before it's always like between 2 or 3 on a scale of 10, when we ask, how comfortable are you with money or how anxious are you with money, it's very high.
Yeah,
And so from 2 to 3 out of 10, the after survey, it's minimum 7, right?
there we go.
So
That's
it's,
tripling, right?
yeah, and it's not, and it's so the point, and it's so simple in a way, but it just never gets done because you can't make much of a profit doing that kind of thing. You can't, you're not
Mhm.
selling anything. You're just helping people figure out what do you want, and
Yeah.
maybe here are some ways you can get started or at least be safe.
Mm.
And I think the important thing that I wanted to mention is because I say it's very much a departure of my past work, but in some ways, it actually, for me, really in my heart, feels like coming home to some of the things that I've been
Okay.
doing, because,
Okay.
well, if I think back to that library, for example,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think that this issue of how people feel and connect with what is currently valued in society, which is money. And
Mm,
it doesn't really matter whether it's money or something else. But the point
yeah.
is how people are day to day. Right now, there's something like 94% of people are struggling in some form with money. That's
True.
insane. So it's a
Yeah.
stressor in our lives in a very big way.
Mm,
But what's maybe even more important, that's already enough, right? That's very important to change. But what's maybe even more important is that I've seen this come back in nonprofits. So we talked
mm,
about that, right?
yeah.
So the ability to even start in these kind of worlds if you don't know what you're doing with money,
Yeah.
or if you just don't have it.
Yeah.
But also, I've seen it in this investment world, right? So hear me out. This is a bit of a jump, but I really,
Yeah. Here
really
we go.
think this is really true. So who gets to innovate, right? Who gets to create things?
Yes.
Like, who creates a startup that fails, right? It's the person who knows, okay, if I fail, I go to mommy's house,
Yeah.
or I get another pot of money somewhere.
Yeah.
Or it's often people who come from wealth. And that needs to
Yeah.
change, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not by definition smarter. In fact,
Mm,
very often it's the opposite. Let's be
yes. Mm,
right. So, how do we tap into this insane potential of all these beautiful, brilliant people that I see all the time who don't have that luxury? Like, they can't just throw everything away and go, let me do a startup. So
I love
I
that.
honestly think it's connected to the systemic. I think it is part of this bigger picture of yes, how are we well? How do we feel well? How can we deal with this world we're in right now? But it's
Hmm.
also about changing who gets to make jumps, who gets to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
bets, who gets to just try out stuff.
Isn't it funny that the two things that we've like of the two things that we talk about in this leadership construct and our relationship with money, that neither of these things are taught in school?
Exactly. How crazy.
Zero. Yeah. Oh, that's phenomenal, right? Because, fundamentally, I think we've all been taught that we live in this world where the best and the brightest succeed. And you're
Totally.
like, wait
Absolute
a minute.
lie.
Yeah, hold
Yeah.
on.
That's a
I've met
scam.
some of these best and brightest,
Not
and
so
they're
bright.
pretty awful and dim.
Yeah, exactly. They're
So you're like,
dark,
yeah,
not
how did
bright.
how did we get to that
Yeah.
point, right? And I
Yeah.
really love that focus that you have there about, if we change our relationship with money,
Hmm.
we fundamentally change the dynamic of who can make changes in the world. That's a
Yeah.
phenomenal statement, right? I love that.
Do you know what else happens? Which I had to actually eat my own words, which is always useful to realize. I really changed my mind about this. So
Mm,
even as I frame it here, like I was doing this really from the perspective of helping people who don't come from money,
mm,
right?
mm.
Actually, turns out
Ah, I get it.
anxiety and guilt and pain around money also sits with people who have money,
Yes.
right? So there's been a couple of people who've done this program who are objectively wealthy. And I mean, they say that it has completely transformed how they feel about money, how they value money, how they relate to it, and
Mm.
somehow it's become less important to them. Right? So
Oh, that's
it
amazing.
almost does the opposite. It's sort of they're letting go a little bit of this hunger for more, 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 more. It's a classic, but it's true, right? You know that you can be just as miserable, obviously, if you're wealthy, right? If you still give the importance to money at the level of this is my identity, and I need more and more and more and more and more, instead of learning what is enough for me,
Mm.
what gives me joy,
Yeah.
what's important to me, what do I need, what do I crave. If you
Mm.
don't do that understanding work, then you're never going to be satisfied. And that goes for
Yeah.
people too who don't have money. So what I see so often, what's so predatory,
Mm, mm, mm.
is so many of my friends from, who again didn't come from that kind of wealthy world. they're sold things, right? Because they're told this narrative, you need more, you need more, you need more. And
Yeah.
yes, we needed more, but it's not more for the sake of it. You need
Yeah.
more because you want to be caring in your community, support your family, be happy, joyful, find things, find time, maybe get a house,
Yeah.
whatever it is for you. So this is a sort of shame-free space.
Oh, I love that. And it prompted that thought for me then that like an amazing group of people to really engage with this. Of course, I think everybody should.
Mm,
First of all, second is that we need people who are therefore in control of money
yes.
to rethink their relationship with money, right? Because
Yes.
then we can be more truly people led about how we spend that money, right? Going back to the point about what
That's
do
right.
donors do, right? We
Hmm.
need them to think differently
Yeah.
about that entirely.
And I also want them to be well,
Yeah, of course.
you know? And so, yeah, I
You're
really
rich, we
do.
don't want you to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. You're not allowed. No,
Sorry, this is not for you.
no, but honestly, like, do you know what's a beautiful thing that happens often is so we go through this cycle, and then of course what happens at the end is okay, people have some places to begin. They get started on a few things, a few setups, an emergency fund, a couple of basics that really help them. But then what very often happens at the end is there is this realization that their version of wealth,
Hmm.
that we have a lot of it already,
Yeah,
right?
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So you
That's
become
really nice.
more conscious. I remember doing this exercise myself again the other day with a group and realizing wealth for me is, a quiet morning with a good cup of coffee
Mm.
and choices of what I'm going to be doing and love in the house and a cat.
Yeah, and a cat.
Cat is number one, obviously.
There's a
But
lot of love there, so I understand.
sometimes you make it so complicated.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, you do.
that requires some money,
Mm.
right?
Of
But
course.
it requires most of all a self-awareness of what matters to me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's the work actually.
No, that's lovely. And you know what? On a very, I think it's poetically put, and I think it manifests in so many different ways. The other day I saw a picture of someone who said, "My grandfather likes to sleep in the field with his potatoes."
Mm,
Right? I
hmm.
mean,
Gorgeous.
right? I mean, like what? I mean, like that sounds pretty crazy. But then you look at him, and he's snoozing out in the field, and you're like, you know what?
Sounds amazing.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's so great. And it really shifts the paradigm of like what really matters.
What
And
really
I
matters?
love that you're doing that work. That's so
Mm.
powerful. I mean, you know,
It's an
let's see it go
experiment.
further, right? Let's
Yeah.
more people need to do this.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful and we'll see, right? Like, as everything, it's an experiment, it's a beautiful experiment. But I think that the more, if I really think about all my different pieces of work, and there's a lot of different ones, and it's hard sometimes for people to, I mean, that's the thing about a portfolio, is that
Mhm.
it's hard to summarize it. And so you have to sort of be okay with that.
Yeah.
People sometimes
And
go,
also what you share with people, right? Because
yeah,
you don't need to tell everything to everybody, right?
no,
It's like, oh no, it's okay. Like,
yeah.
if we spend time together, you'll learn, and when you don't, that's fine. This is what I'm doing, right?
Exactly, exactly. The thing that I wanted to say that's a little woo-woo, but really important to me is that
The
actually
woo.
all of it comes down to something that's fairly, I guess, fairly Buddhist, right? I mean, is this kind of suffering sitting? I feel like Ezra Klein now, by the way. Big mistake. That's a very specific reference. I do
It's okay.
apologize. That's
You're good. You're good.
we can cut that.
No, it's fine. We'll keep it. It's part of the character. It
Just
stays in.
bringing up Buddhism suddenly, but no, but seriously, actually, my dad lived in an ashram for 5 years and stuff, so I'm
Oh, that
very
is so cool.
into this. But the suffering sits in between what is and what you expect, or
Yes.
right. So we can change what is, or we can change what we expect, and both those can be very valuable. So I try to change what is through work in politics and big picture stuff. and one-on-one work. But I also try and change what we desire, what we crave, right? It's so interesting to see a shift that happens when you realize, oh my God, what I want isn't 5 million euros for the sake of it.
Yeah.
What I want is peace and
Mm.
connection and space.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. And that doesn't mean we don't have to have ambition either, right?
No,
Peace and
exactly.
ambition, they're not different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, exactly, I don't want to come across as saying the better version is this simplified, right? This sort of call. I love it when someone goes, actually, I'm going to need 20 mil because I'm going to need a house in 6 places and I'm going to need, I'm like, yes,
Good for you.
good for you. But it's
Yeah.
considered, right? And they know why. And they really want it and desire it and crave it. And they're going to work for it. And they know how to get there, you
Yeah.
know? So that's fine. It's any answer is right. The point is what I really despise and what I really find hard in this world is the chasing for chasing's sake,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's how
And
you
it's
get
this.
Elon Musk.
Amen. I do feel like that's fundamentally part of the issue, right?
He
Is that
should
you
have done
sit
my
in a
program.
situation, you're like, you just don't seem happy, man.
You don't
You
seem
know?
happy.
Yeah.
You don't.
You're
Yeah.
the second or the current richest, rotates, right? And
Mhm.
you're like, what's the point? I mean, like, sure, people are like, well, he's the richest in the world. It's like,
So what?
and,
Right?
like, don't get me wrong, it
Yeah.
just doesn't sound great.
No. And a flood is gonna, flood his home away too. It's not, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't,
Exactly. Yeah.
we're so disconnected from where we are and what we're made of
Mm,
that it feels very far away from what instinctively
mm, mm, mm.
feels better, which is this understanding of what you need, what you crave, and how you can be connected and
Yeah.
loving yourself. And all those things are laughed at usually.
I'm gonna bring up a nerdy kind of game thingy here.
Oh,
There was this video game that was made a bunch of years ago called Stardew Valley. And Stardew Valley is about a very simple concept of leaving the city to run a farm in a village, right?
oh, nice.
And the whole game is you doing that, right? You're living a simple life and getting back to the roots. And the game is so virally popular
Yeah.
that it speaks to this fundamental thing that we've talked about here, that people really do want and seek out that simple peace and joy, right? And
Yeah. It's I always think about this in the context of AI, right? Because we need to figure out how we need to figure out what is specifically human and how we
mm,
are connected to each other and nature and well, we are nature, right? And how
yeah,
how we live. And I think that anything that starts to remove some of those dividing lines is probably in the right direction, right?
yeah,
So anything that brings people together, instead of polarizing them, anything that connects to the humanness of us is probably a good thing.
yeah.
I'm not a Luddite. I'm not saying every tech is bad, right?
Down with
But
tech.
yeah, I could take down the computers, but and also
Mm,
we're going to need more of the very almost old-fashioned feeling
mm,
work
yeah,
of seeing each other, hearing each other, supporting each other, community, and not just with online petitions, please, but
yeah.
actual community where we support each other, figure out ways to help, and just kind of create the sense of what humanity is about. It's going to just be more and more important as we sort of go further and further into these algorithms. What does it take to be more human?
A philosophical question, but a very simple one at the same time. What does it mean to be human, right?
Yeah,
That's great. I think anybody can ask that anywhere, right? It doesn't have to be massive. At the same time, it can also be as simple as, like you said earlier, coffee with the cat.
seriously. It's quite nice, right? If you think about it,
Yeah.
just that spaciousness. Most people, when you have this famous kind of five whys framework. Why? You just keep asking why. There's a teacher I once had who basically said 90% of the fifth why is peace.
Love that.
you know?
That's great. And if I currently am at peace. Are you currently at peace? Do you have any thoughts that you want to share with the group before we
No.
wrap it up here? Because peace is, I think, a brilliant place to end.
Yeah, exactly. I loved this conversation. It's funny because my cat just started meowing, so this is perfect timing.
My stomach started growling
Yeah,
in contrast.
no, but I really value this conversation. I think we need to really play with what work is, how we can have impact, and I just keep on, yeah, experimenting like you are, which is beautiful. And of course, some things don't work, and then others do, and that's great. And in the meantime, if we just stay connected and, stay kind where we can and supportive of others, I think we're living a pretty good life.
Amen. Amen to that. And I
So
think,
thank you.
no, thank you for this. It's
Of
been a
course.
delightful journey to go through
Likewise.
both your journey, right? And
Mm.
at the same time, it reminded me of the things that we need to teach outside of school because apparently school's not teaching it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about your future with your money, right?
Thank
Because I
you.
love the reshaping of
Yeah.
people's perceptions of such a crazy topic
Yeah.
in this crazy world.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes out of it, and just capturing that human experience in and of itself is super interesting. So I can't wait to see where it goes. Thank you.
Amazing.
All
Thank
right.
you so much. I hope
Good
you
to
have a
see you.
lovely day.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye, everyone.
Hey gang, hope you enjoyed that episode with Gauri. Go check out her project, Dear Money, as they're building a great initiative to actually make a difference with people's understanding of money and how it relates to them and to help them prioritize, like actually, what is my relationship with money? That's a fundamental question that I don't think we ask. We treat it as a transactional thing, but there's so many implications for what it does to our mind, the way we think about work, how we can do good work. So go check it out. They're doing amazing things. Also, I'm finally doing the end of episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, rate us. We now have an Instagram page. Wherever you're watching or consuming our content, please do leave a little rating for us so that we can get the word out to other people that this is the story, this is what we're trying to do. And I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope you keep doing great things. This is the Doing Good Show. See you later.